Hello everyone, I'm Exodia, and I'm making another scripting tutorial. This one's a little different from what we normally do, is I do the advanced or beginner series tutorials on Wednesdays and Sundays. Today we're doing kind of like a miscellaneous category where I show you how to script different types of things for your game, such as maybe like a pet hatching system, or in this case for today's video topic, a shift to sprint script. So yeah, let's get right into the video. To make the shift to sprint script, we will start by going into starter player, and then clicking on this plus by starter player scripts and inserting a local script. And then we'll call this sprint underscore client for organization. And then we'll go into replicated storage, make a remote event, use Control D to duplicate it, and then call this walk, and then call the other one sprint. And then what we'll do on the client is we will make two variables. We are getting two services, replicated storage and user input service. So what we'll do, user input service equals game colon get service, user input service. And then we'll make another variable for replicated storage, so local replicated storage equals game colon get service, replicated storage, and then we will make two more variables for each of our remote events. So local walk event equals replicated storage colon wait for child walk, and then local sprint event equals replicated storage colon wait for child sprint. And you want to make sure that our remote event names are the same as they are in replicated storage, as Lua is case sensitive, and if these strings do not match up, then you will get an error when trying to retrieve them. And we use colon wait for child, so we have kind of like a yield as we wait for the remote events to load in. Otherwise, if we were to just write replicated storage dot walk, for example, we don't know if the remote event will load in time, so we want to make sure that we use wait for child walk so we can have the remote event loaded in for usage. So anyways, we will do user input service, and what user input service allows us to do is it allows us to detect when an input on a controller or keyboard, for example, occurs, so or when it ends. So in this case, we're going to do user input service dot input began to get when the player starts the input, colon connect function. And then our two parameters for this function are input to get the input that we are starting, as well as game processed. This is just something for the server to make sure that the input gets processed, or for the game itself rather. And then we can make an if statement for if input dot key code. And key code is just a fancy way of saying the key on your computer or that button on your controller. It's just how, in technical terms, how we get it. So if input.keycode equals enum.keycode dot, in this case we're going to use left shift for our sprint button. And if you know a button that you can bind for your controller, like in this case, maybe we can do else if input dot key code equals enum dot key code dot button A, or button L1. So what this will do is it'll detect whether we are using shift on our keyboard or using the left trigger on our controller. So in here we will fire the sprint event, so sprint event colon fire server. Now we are firing this to the server so we can detect when the input starts on the client, and that way we can change the player speed on the server so that it works properly, because if you change it on the client, then nothing's going to happen, as the client changes do not occur across the whole game, so they will not actually be picked up. So we'll do sprint event colon fire server, and so basically what having this enum.keycode.button L1 check for in our user input service.input began function allows us to check if somebody's on Xbox and they want to sprint, then they can use the left trigger to sprint rather than using left shift on your keyboard. So this just allows for some console compatibility for our players to bring a better experience so that they can use the features as well. And we'll also make a new, we'll do user input service.input ended. Now, just like with input began being what triggers when the input starts, input ended triggers when we release the button. So we'll do :connect function, and the parameters are the same. It's the input and game processed to make sure the action goes through. I'll do if input.keycode equals enum.keycode.left shift, then we will fire the walk event this time, :fire server. Else if input.keycode equals enum.keycode.button L1, then walk event :fire server. Now, I'm not sure if I'd be able to test the console support. I could try plugging in a controller, which I will try to do after we get the server script scripted, but at least we can test if the left shift will work. So for now, we'll just go to server script service and create a new script and call it sprint_server for some nice organization. And then we'll make 3 variables, one for replicated storage equals game : get service replicated storage, just like on the client. And then we'll make 2 more variables for our events again. So local walk event equals replicated storage : wait for child walk. And then we'll make another one for the sprint event. Sprint event equals replicated storage : wait for child sprint. And then what these events allow us to do is execute code on the server when something happens on the client by writing, for example, when the sprint event is fired, we can write sprint event.onServer event. This is the function that triggers every time the event is fired to the server. And by default, we always have the parameter, the first parameter that is given being the player, and any parameters we give on the client will come in that order after the player. So, for example, if we wrote like 16, then we can make that variable for speed. But we don't really need that. So basically what we'll do here is we'll do player.character : wait for child humanoid .walk speed. And in fact, well, we could use wait for child to make sure that the humanoid is loaded in. Instead, we'll do : find first child of class, or just find first child will work. It should just work. So we'll do player.character : find first child .humanoid. This will search the character model of the player for the humanoid item, and then walk speed, which is a property of the humanoid to get the speed that they're walking at in studs per second, I believe. We could set this to 32. However, and I'll make a comment for this. This is the sprint speed. This can be set to whatever you want, and then we do walk event .onServer event :connect function, and once again, player is our parameter, and we'll do player.character : find first child humanoid .walk speed equals 16. 16 is the default speed, so we'll set back to the default walk speed. set player back to the default walk speed. And then if we were to test this in Studio, we'll find that we can walk around, and if we press shift, then we will start sprinting at our sprint speed, which is really nice. We got an error here. I see. It's because I misspelled find first child, which is alright. If we retest the game, then everything should be working just fine. It is always okay to have errors in your game. That's just a part of getting better and a part of learning. So don't be worried if you have errors in your scripts. It's just a part of the process sometimes. But yeah, if we hold shift, then we'll start sprinting at our sprint speed. If we let go, then we're perfectly fine. And I'm going to try changing my controller. As you can see, if we press L1, which is actually left bumper, my bad, L2 would be the left trigger on our controller. If we press left bumper on our controller, you can see we have some console support, and we could sprint with our controller rather than our keyboard. So yeah, that is a simple sprint script where you can hold shift, or in this case, left bumper or left trigger, or whatever you want to bind the button to sprint. And then when you let go of that button, you will stop sprinting. It's a pretty simple script, you know. It only takes user input service to use, and user input service is a pretty useful thing to use in your scripts when you want to bind actions to a button whenever a player presses that key. So yeah, that's it for the tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe and like. If there's any issues that you had, feel free to comment down below or give me some criticism on the video. I will also make a model for this if you would like some help or want to use the scripts and maybe don't want to do the typing or you don't have the time to. I will leave a model in the description that you can get from the Roblox library. So yeah, see you. Next video should be in the advanced series on Sunday.